So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this week's Monday Morning in Human Intelligence. So 30 minutes to shake up your brain and get your week started off right. And I'm thrilled about today's episode for a couple reasons. And the first is that I'm joined by my great friend, Johanna Quintero. So Joanna is the founder of SmartVine. So it's a business consulting firm focused on helping organizations grow by aligning their culture, their strategy, and their customers. Joanna came to the US about 3 years ago as a vice president of digital marketing, and now she's here as the founder of her own business. But more important to me personally, she's a great friend and has been a great mentor as I've been starting my business. The second reason that I'm thrilled about today is that we're talking about a subject that is, I think, one of the most important subjects in all of human intelligence, and that's trust. And Joanna and I have been talking for a while about how to collaborate on a lesson about trust and the importance of trust in the workplace. And there's a few of these lessons in human intelligence that we really call the end lessons. So that when you listen to everything we have to say, when we get to the end, the most important thing for you to know are these core truths. And one of those is trust. And that without trust, people are not willing to bring you their best ideas. So in the problems that we're working on in our workplaces today, particularly in this time of the pandemic, we need everyone's best ideas that they bring to the organization and to the team. And we, I think, tend to underestimate how important or how personal those ideas are. And the more innovative an idea is, the more personal it is to the person who's bringing it. And in order to share that idea, you have to take a risk. And that risk is that I could offer up my idea that I've been thinking about, and you could say, well, that's stupid. We're not going to do that. And now it impacts me on a personal level. So talking about trust and the way that it works in the workplace is one of the core truths of what we do here at Human Intelligence. So I appreciate you being with me here, Joanna, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. I was looking forward to it.
Good. So first, I'd like to share our definition of trust. Right? We work in an area where lots of things are not very well defined, whether it's creativity or collaboration or strategy, and trust is another one of those things. But this is the best definition of trust that I've found, and it really talks to the issues that we want to address today. And that is, trust is believing that when given a chance, you will not do something damaging to me. So believing when given a chance, you will not do something damaging to me. So let's take that apart for a second, right? So I say that trust is an action verb. I have to choose to trust someone. It's not simply a feeling. It's not an emotion that I have. I make a choice to believe that if I make myself vulnerable, you are not going to do something that will damage me or be negatively impactful back to me. So that means that trust and vulnerability are inseparable, that I cannot have trust unless I first have vulnerability. And the second part is that trust has to be has to be associated with risk, right? That I take that risk to be vulnerable and that I can't separate the two of those things. One thing that I think is important for us to recognize is that the opposite of trust in the workplace is not simply distrust, that the opposite of trust in the workplace is control. And none of us are looking to work in places where control is really the key element of the place where we work. So what I'd like you to do as we move the conversation to talk to Joanna is to, on a piece of paper there in front of you, I would like you to write down the names of 3 people. And these are 3 people that you trust, but I want them to sort of fall into these 3 categories. The first is the name of a close friend or a family member that you trust. The second is a peer at work that you trust. And the third is a supervisor that you trust. So by writing down those 3 names, the name of a close friend or family member that you trust, a peer that you trust, and a supervisor that you trust, it'll sort of ground your mind in what we're talking about in terms of trust in the workplace. So as you write those, I'd like to go to Joanna, and we've talked for weeks about how to work together to collaborate on some content about trust and the importance of trust in the workplace. So I'm curious for you, Joanna, like, how do you see the role of trust in the workplaces today with yourself as well as with the clients you work with?
Dan, thank you so much. Actually, I believe that every organization should build culture based on trust, right? Because trust improve performance, improve the energy of the people. They want to work there. Um, it gives you the freedom to build your business, focusing on growth instead of like try to micromanagement every member. So I believe people need to consciously build culture based on trust. So it's very important. And I have many stories. We were talking about this. I have many stories to share about my clients and about how trust is so important. But I actually decided to bring one that is very personal and is painful actually to share, but I'm gonna, try to do it without go like very emotional. And I'm doing this is because this story changed my life and is actually it is the reason and is the purpose behind SmartVine. So it was when I lost my dad, and I want to share this story even if it was about emergency rooms and about hospitals. Trust applies to every organization, and trust is about being vulnerable and show that you build your life based on your experience, and you actually trust based on your experience and your beliefs and everything. And we need to understand that when we are building businesses, it's not like something that is
Sure.
magic. So the story, Dan and everyone else, thank you so much for being here. It was a few years ago, my dad started feeling sick, and I took him to a hospital. And it was in Colombia, of course, when I was living. We were building businesses there, and I took him to the hospital, and the doctors diagnosed my dad in the wrong way. They treat him with the wrong medicine, and then they decided to send him home. And I was like, okay, something is wrong here, because the doctor that I talked to her last night, and she said like he needs more treatment and different tests, and something is wrong. So I asked the cardiologist and everyone else, and they were telling me like, yeah, it's okay. You just go home and take your dad, and everything is gonna be okay. But then that night, I found my dad. He passed out inside the bathroom at 4 a.m.
Mm.
So they actually betray my trust, right, in that moment. So I decided not to take him to this hospital. I decided to take him to another hospital, thinking that I'm gonna take
Right.
them to other doctors. And when I took him, um, they say like he's gonna be okay, and I was like, he has an internal bleeding, and they were like, he's gonna be okay, he's gonna be okay. 24 hours later, I start like screaming and fighting with everyone, like no one is paying attention. So they finally called the director of the hospital. One of the doctors, the one that was in charge in emergency, he said like, okay, I'm the doctor, I'm the one that I know what I'm doing. You are in the emergency room. If you keep asking questions, I'm gonna kick you out. So I'm bringing this story is because when they finally decided to bring the specialist, it was too late. My dad already lost a lot of blood, and he got in coma, and he died 3 days later. So I want to bring this is because Dan, trust is not like build trust is not the challenge. We actually naturally we are inclined, we trust by default. That's how our brain works. We need to trust, so that's part of our survival strategy. But keep the commitment and the honor of that trust is what is important. It's the challenge that we have to do it. So I trust the doctors that I can bring a loved one, and they actually betrayed us. So we have to do that. We have to have like, if everyone trusts us, if someone trusts us as a business leaders, we have to keep the commitment to build that trust.
Right. First, thank you for trusting us enough to share that story. Right. Stories are incredibly personal. Stories are incredibly powerful for both expressing trust and building trust. And I appreciate you trusting me enough to come on and tell that story to the folks that are here listening to us. And it almost seems crass to move from from that story that is so personal about you and your life to how it works in the business environment. But I appreciate you allowing us to do that. And I think one of the things that you bring up, and it's a great point, is that we talk about how to build trust, but you're exactly right. Building trust is usually not the problem. That people, because we're social creatures, because humans work with other humans, we show up with some default level of trust. So everyone has some level of trust they have when they work with particularly other professionals. So when you were talking to the doctors, you had a certain level of trust with people who practice medicine, and you believe that people who practice medicine are going to try to save their patients. So you show up with that trust, and it turned out that those doctors did not do what they should have done. So your level of trust for all doctors decreased after that time.
Completely. Mm-hmm.
And we see the same thing with lawyers or with architects or with people who are in marketing, that we sort of attach the trust that comes from our experience with those professions to the individuals that show up. And now it's up to that person to either choose to fulfill our expectations and live up to the trust, or not to. So I'm curious, when you are working with your clients, particularly, I know you do a lot of work with people in the construction industry, and they have jobs that and responsibilities that sometimes can be dangerous and are often very, very expensive. How do you see trust applying to those types of jobs as well?
So yeah, definitely trust in this with my clients in the industry of constructions or environmental services, that they are
Hmm.
actually carrying trees and all of that kind of dangerous jobs. Trust is very important, not only from the leaders, between co-workers, right? I need to
Right.
trust that you're doing a good job, so you're not gonna put the rest of the team in danger. um, it is very important, but we have an issue right now that everyone is demanding leadership and everyone is demanding freedom. But when you are trying to build a culture based on trust, you need to, as a leader, you need to define the reality
Hmm.
very clear, because everyone tried to create the reality. It is what it is then, but we try to create our reality, our own reality, based on our perspective and
Right.
our cognitive biases, right?
Right.
Everything that happened to me, my beliefs, my values, my past experience, so this is what I believe is the reality. So the role of the leader, and of course in construction and environmental services like my clients, they are, is the first responsibility is you need to build the reality. You need to be very clear, so everyone understands what are the expectations, what they need to do, what are the rules. But then after that, what they need to do is like give the clear direction, and after that train your people, help them to be the best, create the environment that they can
Hmm.
speak their minds, you know, but also be very clear that freedom has some boundaries. So
Right.
it's about the common good, because it can cost lives, like what happened to me, right? Just
Hmm.
because you have the white coat doesn't mean that you are gonna do a good job. And that cost me the life of my dad. So definitely, I believe that organizations need, it's not a bit being easy to your people. You need to expect the best from
Right.
them.
Right.
That's when you build trust. If you are expecting the best of me, I can trust that you actually care about me. Um, but also it's about clear directions.
Right.
So it is important. Like freedom, it's not about control or micromanagement. It's I'm gonna give you freedom because I treat you as an adult, but I also need to be very clear that I can be counted on you.
Yes. No, I think that's great. And in the chat, Troy Mueller there is saying that we need to pair trust with accountability. And I think you bring up a great point there, is that I can trust in your intentions, right? Joanna, I trust that you are not going to choose to do something that is damaging to me. But if I needed to have heart surgery, I'm probably not going to come to you for heart surgery, right? I don't trust your ability to be a doctor, right? So we have to think about trusting in intentions and then trusting in capabilities. And if I'm a business leader and I want to trust the people that are doing the construction job, I owe it to them to give them the training that they need so they can be confident, and not only in their intentions towards me, that they're not going to intentionally do a bad job, but that I've given them the tools that they need in order to do a good job. And I think that builds trust as well. As we invest in people, people return that trustworthiness with better results and with a desire to do better. And in fact, this is exactly what a study in the Netherlands showed as well, where they looked at it was an insurance company, and they essentially did surveys and found out which teams had the highest trust among team members and which people had the highest levels of trust with their supervisors. And what they found was, I mean, really no surprise. I mean, we're discussing it here today, that those teams that had the highest levels of trust also had the highest level of what they called innovative behavior, right? That those people with the highest levels of trust brought their best ideas, and they were able to do better than teams that didn't have trust. Right? It's no surprise if you have high levels of trust, people are going to cooperate better and work together better. But I'm curious about you in particular. As you go into these companies, you are coming in usually as an outsider. You're coming in as not a person who is already a part of the team, and you're asking those business leaders to trust you, right? They have to, for you to do your job, they have to open up their books and they have to tell you about the problems and tell you about the good things as well. So how do you personally build trust with your clients so that they'll do that?
Oh, that's a great question, because I actually then need to gain the trust um, from the leaders, but also from the team, right?
True.
I'm like in the middle, so I'm trying to close that gap that is between what I'm expecting as a leader, because it's about the goals and about money and about profit, but
Right.
also from the workers that I'm expecting you give me stability and you give me future and I can grow and
Sure.
create the environment that I can be better. So the way that I actually build trust is building trust consciously, right? I know that
Right.
they trust me because I'm a consultant. I have experience in businesses for many years. I study neuro leadership, neuro management, and all of this. But that's when I talk about commitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need to honor that you trust me as a consultant. So the first thing is like I use data.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I ask for the financial data. Let's study. Let's not make decision based on only our intuition. But then I give them I actually respect that it's their business that they need to build. They
Right.
need to deal with the consequence. So I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is the data. This is what I found. Now let's find the best decision or outcome to this problem.
Mm-hmm.
So they feel like I'm bringing what they need to make the right decision, but I also give them the freedom to to decide what they need to do. And
Sure.
that's what you need. Actually, you need to treat your employees too, or your team members. It's like I give you training, I treat you with respect, I treat you well, so I consciously get that trust, but I also give you the freedom to make your own decisions. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I need to do. And I also, when I talk to workers, I talk with them from the position that I was in the both sides. I was a business leader. I am a business leader
Right.
now, but I was an employee too. So I
Mm-hmm.
know that you're expecting that if someone is part of the team, is gonna bring the best.
Yes.
Mhm.
So thank you. Thank you very much. So we have really 1 minute before we open it up, but I always like to give uh, some concrete things that folks can do to from this discussion. And really, we've hit on all of these, right? So what can you do to build trust among your team? The first is sharing personal stories with your team, just like you sharing the story about your father and how that impacted you. That not only was an expression of trust, but that created trust um, in all of us listening to you, believing that you, Joanna, are someone who is worthy of trust. And sharing those personal stories allows that connection to happen. But sharing also means listening to other people's stories. So you've told me as you go and you talk to the employees at the places where you consult, you need them to tell you their stories, and in doing that, you're helping to build that trust with them as well. So I think stories are a powerful way to do that. And then the others we mentioned already: set clear goals and expectations. If we have a clear expectation, we can all be working towards achieving that, and we eliminate the chance that we're just not communicating well. If people know what to expect, then they know sort of where those boundaries are, and they can work inside those, and they know that something's not going to be done that's damaging to them. And then the final one is to recognize vulnerability. Just like you're saying with your clients who are sharing their financial records with you, that you recognize that that is something that's very personal to them, and you treat that with respect, and you work to be worthy of that respect. So I appreciate you saying that. So now what we do is we will open it up for questions. So what I'm going to do is actually make everyone who is on the call right now a panelist as well. So what you can do now is you're allowed to you can talk, you can post into the chat. If you want to meet other folks that are here, you can post your LinkedIn profile or anything else that you have there, and we will be able to ask questions. We have a ton of people that have joined us today, so it's taking me a minute longer than normal to open everyone up here. So you can ask your questions or give your perspective on trust here. So anyone that's already promoted a panelist, if you'd like to ask a question, you can go ahead and come off mute and ask your question.
I'll go.
Yeah, thanks, Donna.
So Joanna, you're welcome, Dan. Nice to see everyone. I haven't been here in a while. Joanna, thank you for sharing that story about your dad. And while you were sharing it, or at the end of you sharing it, one of the things that I commented on was the fact that just reiterating, because a light bulb really went off for me when you said that trust is just automatically given. And as hopeful people, it's often given again and again and again, which is why when we're betrayed, it's so devastating at times because it's just not expected. How do you recover from that devastation, whether you have violated unintentionally somebody's trust? Actually, let's go with that. If you have unintentionally violated someone's trust, how do you go about regaining it?
Well, that's a wonderful question, Donna, because Donna, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, if I say it in there with my accent Latin, just let me know. But thank you so much. It's a great question because actually, right now, trust was one of the most topics that it was violated because COVID. A lot of organizations need to let people go, and I trust you that you're gonna keep my job stable, right? So the first thing that you need to do is show vulnerability and say like, I'm sorry, you know, I make a mistake. Maybe I did it unintentionally, but you were expecting that I did it in the best I mean in the best intention. So first, vulnerability. Second, I would say like you need to be empathetic about the other like the behavior that the other person is showing you, because no matter what, they feel betrayed, right? So you have to not try to be defensive. Instead of like, I understand why you're feeling like that, let's figure it out. How can we fix this? Sometimes it's like, take responsibility. And I talk to my clients, as a leader, you need to take responsibility. No matter what, you have the responsibilities to supervise your team that they are doing the right thing. So take responsibility, show vulnerability, and then ask for help. Like, how can we fix this together? Because we betray trust is because we're not clear with the expectations, or we don't stop and we say like, hey, I'm not gonna be able to commit what I say. So how can we fix this before you feel betrayed? Yeah.
So I think no, I think that's great. And Donna, I think you bring up a great point, that the more trust you have in the bank before those events happen, the easier it is to recover from that, right? So if I trust the people on my team, I believe that they're not going to intentionally do something damaging to me, and that whatever the thing was that they did was probably either an oversight or a mistake or some type of error, not some intentional attempt to undermine me and what I'm trying to do. So I think Joanna's exactly right in her approach there. Great, thank you for that.
Thank
We've got
you.
lots of stuff going
Thank you.
In the chat. So Rebecca asked about building emotional intelligence and using emotional intelligence to promote a trusting working group. So how, Joanna, could you see helping teams to improve their overall emotional intelligence and being able to work better with people in general and to really be authentic and understanding and empathetic, like you mentioned?
So we actually create like a strategic team buildings. Who did it? It was Rebecca.
Rebecca, yes.
Rebecca, thank you so much for your question. We actually create strategic team buildings activities because we need to understand that we have a beautiful machine between our ears, but we work subconsciously 95%. So the emotional intelligence we need to work with the 5% consciously, right? So the only way that we trust to others is when you treat me well, when you treat me fairly, when I can understand what are the rules, what are the expectations, if you're expecting the best from me, and I understand what I need to do to keep that trust. So we work a lot, like emotional intelligence is consciously, is self-awareness, is to understand that you are seeing your reality with your glasses and I'm seeing my reality with my glasses, right? Because whatever happened before. So the emotional intelligence part, it has to be like a daily job that I help my employees to understand, okay, let's create a common reality. Let's actually, before react, try to understand with consciously what we need to say or what we need to do.
Yes.
I don't know
That
if I was
yeah, no, that's perfect. And that's so important. I mean, that's another one of the end lessons of human intelligence is that if we allow ourselves just to sort of act on default, we're going to get to bad places, right? We make bad decisions, we come to bad conclusions. But if we work intentionally, we can use our brains to come up with better ideas, better solutions, and better relationships. There's a great question in the chat from Michael Brooks about how do you protect your organization from another organization that you must deal with when they become untrustworthy? And I love this question because one of my last jobs in the Air Force was running the hotline between our air operations headquarters in Qatar and the Russian operations headquarters in Syria. So we had to talk. By the end, we were talking maybe 20 times a day, making sure that we weren't running airplanes into each other and that we weren't bombing the other side's troops unless that's what we were intending to do. So I can't say that I trusted the Russians in that discussion, in that relationship, but I could still cooperate with them. We could still cooperate for our end goal. But what we did was we would wall ourselves off from excess vulnerability, right? So our aircraft, as they show up, are both completely armed, and we were clear with the other side about what we would tolerate and what we would not. And we would ensure that we had a common understanding of here is our common goal is to ensure that we're not endangering each other's forces, but each side is willing to defend itself to ensure that that common goal is advanced. So I think really the answer to your question there is that maybe it's not a question of trust anymore. It's a question of cooperation. And how can I establish cooperation in the absence of trust? And businesses sometimes do this all the time, right? You have well-defined contracts that specify what can be done and what can't be done, and you operate on a contractual basis rather than on a trust basis. So we have 1 minute left, and Rebecca has asked one more question about the correlation between emotional intelligence and white-collar jobs. So I'm curious.
I can dig into that a little bit more.
You can do it in about 10 seconds.
Most people on this call are within a position where they're pretty educated and highly skilled. How do we spread that throughout other positions? Because you see open aggression a lot of times, and I feel like we need to spread it out to everyone.
Right. So
and how is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of what we talk about here is all about humans, right? It's not about the job that you have or the position you have or the level of education you have. We work at the level of human to human interaction. And humans, when you act as if a human is trustworthy, they tend to respond with being worthy of that trust. So acting towards people with respect and with trustworthiness is the easiest way to begin to build trust, and is just the right thing to do. So we're out of time for today. As you sign off, there'll be a survey with one thing that you liked and one thing that you wish were different. So please fill that out. That helps us to shape topics for the next weeks. And I really appreciate Joanna being here. Thank you so much for being a guest. We'd love to have you back later to talk about other things. So thanks for sharing your experience. So thank you. Have a great week, and we will see you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.